Steroid use lasts. It makes you pretty much more awesome for life.
You could have a cocaine positive movement.
In some cases, steroids are therapeutic.
Not dangerous.
Well, every kid wants to be like that, right? So you're kind of deceiving the kids.
Well, you're not deceiving them because cigarettes and steroids are dope.
Many of you guys probably know about the YouTube channel Jubilee. They make a lot of real-life videos of dating apps, putting people into guessing games like Guess the Gay Guy, Guess Who's White, stuff like that. They're usually not the type of channel I would watch, but they also have this very interesting video series called Middle Ground, where two groups of people on the opposite side of a spectrum get together in a room with a moderator and discuss problems relating to both sides to find their, well, middle ground. And they've made these bodybuilders versus fat people, fit women versus fit men, my personal favorite being scientists versus flat earthers.
Pretty easy to say YouTube isn't research, but when you spend enough time, you're picking up quite a bit.
But this time around, they got a whole lot of natural bodybuilders and enhanced bodybuilders to do these discussions, with the moderator being the literal biggest guy in the room by far, Eric Janicki, and a couple of familiar faces on either side. Oh my god, they actually brought Togi into this.
I'm not the best of the best, I'm just due to the dude.
And so they start by putting out these statements that steroids are dangerous and should not be normalized in fitness, and the guys who agree step forward and present their arguments, and afterwards the guys that disagree come forward with theirs. And the arguments basically go like, yes, steroids are dangerous and we shouldn't normalize them because of the health issues associated, the body dysmorphia it can create in young men, teens, etc, which I think everyone can agree with. And then these steroid bodybuilders step forward and start presenting their point of view.
A lot of what you guys were talking about is steroid abuse. Like all the people you named who died and were very young or whatever, were abusing steroids.
Thinking beyond what this question is. Steroids are dangerous. What's a steroid? How is it dangerous? In what application?
And they start by saying that steroids aren't unhealthy on their own. It's just the steroid abuse that is unhealthy, which is when you see these young bodybuilders dropping dead at 30 or 40 years old, while a moderate dose of something like TRT could actually improve several aspects of one's health. And I gotta say, I also agree with this. Steroids on their own aren't necessarily unhealthy, it's the dose and the application. It's just that the dose you need to take to get negative health outcomes can be very low. Although I think very few people on this planet would ever need some sort of anabolic to actually become healthier, it could help a few people out who have naturally low levels of testosterone. But Mark Lobliner, who I've been watching on YouTube since I was like 14, says that steroids can help because we have a low test epidemic, and everyone is now a soy boy. Soy boy! And that is just halfway true. The reason why testosterone is lower nowadays isn't because people are just born with it, but because people nowadays live longer, so that the average testosterone levels will come down because of that alone. But also, people are less physically active, they work more sedentary jobs, more people are obese, and on top of that you have those small cumulative risk factors like the foods we eat, microplastics, screen time disturbing sleep, etc. But people who train, sleep well, and eat healthy don't really have lower testosterone today than they did 50 years ago, unless you remove all of those factors, and you don't need anabolics to fix that. Actually, to correct myself, there is a slight decline despite all of these factors as well, but it's not that major. But again, it's also a matter of taking TRT to get a normal hormonal balance for your health versus a bodybuilder taking a cycle just for looks and their own personal ambitions, which I don't think anyone would argue is remotely healthy. If anything, it just fuels their body dysmorphia because once they stop taking them and their muscles waste away, they may end up feeling worse than they did starting out. So, just like with everything, the dose makes the poison and the context is important. Togi is just a massive troll throughout this entire episode, just going around saying stuff for the sake of arguing. But he comes around and says something that is somewhat true.
Even though more people in the NFL are dying trying to get there, more kids are dying trying to get there, then there are people that are the kids abusing steroids. So just because it's dangerous doesn't mean it's bad to put out on the world, just because, you know, we're humans, we want exciting, entertaining stuff. And nobody's denying that it's dangerous, but we can still enjoy how insane it is.
Now he's heavily biased because he took steroids to get a naturally achievable physique. But he does sort of have a point. Steroids aren't more dangerous than a lot of things being shown and promoted to the masses, and people like to watch extreme things. But that doesn't mean it's not dangerous and that you should be doing it. It's like saying we should promote anything that's dangerous on the basis that people want to see it, which is insane. Because the only thing people will see is the success, but not the negative sides, which with heavy anabolics is a fucking lot. Like needing to take hormones for the rest of your life to function properly, potential heart problems, liver damage, cognitive disorders, depression, and much more. You may even end up sounding like the parrot from Aladdin if you give it enough time.
$99, it is worth $99,000 if the freaking thing works.
But what social media does is it showcases all the positives of steroid use while hiding all of the negatives, giving people the perception that, hey, this is awesome, this is so cool. If you see somebody living your dream life with your dream physique and they're taking steroids, then many would just start a cycle just on the basis of that. So in my opinion, showcasing the negative sides is just as important to give people a realistic image of what's actually going on.
When you say that that's cool, he's saying, you know, like, oh, that's cool, that makes you badass. Every kid wants to be a badass. What's happening?
Saying it's cool is not necessarily promoting it.
My guy, it quite literally is. Ugh, saying stuff like that is gonna make me Wes my Watson.
It was self-defense, clear as day.
I don't think the steroid side really has a lot of good arguments though, outside of, hey, steroids can be healthy in a doctor's prescribed dose, or that you could take steroids to improve your career, which mind you, very few actually get better lives from taking steroids. But all the guys on the right here basically built their careers on that stuff, so there's definitely some underlying bias. And you rarely ever see people whose lives got worse after taking steroids step up and actually tell their story. I think the most open-minded guy there is probably Niall, because he's pretty open to all the others' point of view, and he seems like he's all in on that, yes, steroids are bad and they shouldn't be used at all, but that he himself decided to take them to pursue bodybuilding for himself. Because if you want to be the best there, it's kind of obligatory. Then they go around talking about natural bodybuilding, which in a lot of sense is just a massive joke. Like this guy, he claims to be natural because he's competing in Muscle Mania, which is drug tested, although guys like Simeon Panda and Ulysses Jr. have placed well for years.
I believe Simeon Panda's natural. I believe Ulysses Jr. is natural.
I don't actually think Joshua is natural, although he could be that 1 in 1 billion genetic freak. I think it's unlikely, and let's just not talk about this guy. These guys are almost as big as Eric, who did a great job as a moderator by the way, and he seemed pretty well reflected in that other video with bodybuilders versus fat people.
We could have a cocaine positive movement, because if you're happy ripping a ton of cocaine, even though it's not necessarily healthy, as long as they're happy, let them do it.
But anyways, they move on to the topic of steroids causing unrealistic expectations. And frankly, it does. Regardless of whether or not you know somebody is natural or not, many people will still compare themselves to the guys they see in the magazines and today on social media. And especially guys who claim to be natural but really aren't. I think it's actually come to a point now though, since we used to have this fake natty epidemic where people thought you could be on the Olympia stage naturally, now it's turned into that every person who looked like they lift gets steroid accusations. Because a lot of people in the industry have naturally achievable results, but are on steroids. This isn't unique to just steroid use though, it comes in all forms of social media. When you see rich people or successful people or just somebody doing better than you, it's also been scientifically documented. And it's probably a big reason why so many young guys feel the need to start taking PEDs, because they don't feel like they're good enough compared to the people they see on social media. And then they start the discussion of, can you have too much muscle? I think this one is far too subjective to ever land on a single statement and actually agree on anything, because one guy can say, yeah, women don't like that much muscle and they can set a limit. Another guy can be natural and want to become massive and say that there is no such thing, because he might never be satisfied. And you can discuss that for health reasons, there is a limit to how much muscle you should have on your body. In professional bodybuilding, there isn't one. And if you're natural, you might never get to the point where the amount of muscle you have is actually too damaging. They're basically just throwing the ball around before they jump into the topic of natural bodybuilding once again, which pretty much nobody there actually has a positive view on in the competition sense. Now, just building muscle naturally is one thing, but competing naturally can really mess up your testosterone levels, and it's really tough mentally to get through. Arguably much tougher than enhanced bodybuilding, because you're not really getting any support. You're basically just raw dogging getting into the single digits of body fat. And to be fair, non-tested bodybuilding has a lot of image issues already, but at least gets a lot of views because you're seeing the most muscular people on earth. And with natural bodybuilding, despite being a lot healthier, it's not very appealing visually to both those into fitness or people who just train for fun. And so Eric ends it all off by asking everyone which guy in the room has the best physique according to them. And almost all of them vote for Joshua, the natural guy, which wasn't very surprising because he is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, out of the bunch. Or at least he looks that way because his arms are fucking massive. But Eric also brings up another thing, that all the enhanced guys, aside from Mark, were covering up a lot more than the natural guys, which could indicate that the guys on PEDs were less happy with their own physique than the naturals, which actually kind of makes sense because very few of them actually compete. And a few of the guys made the remark that they use steroids to get a physique that they are happy with. So this brings it all back to the argument that steroid use doesn't help with body dysmorphia. If anything, it could make it worse. And that these guys are only positive to steroids for the most part because of the success it brought them. Although they acknowledge that they're not inherently unhealthy, that it's very easy to take a dose of something which makes it unhealthy, but that the context matters. Take someone like Jax Fit, who couldn't put on weight to save his life, started taking PEDs to improve his appetite, which one could argue is probably making him more healthy. Overall though, it's a pretty interesting discussion, and if you want to watch the whole thing, I will pin the link in the description. And let me know down below in the comments if you agree or disagree with any of the takes. And if you liked the video, feel free to leave a like as it helps the algorithm push it out to more people. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.